My name is Doug Weinstein, and I am representing Mr. Kassotis in this case. It is my honor to do so. Ladies and gentlemen, my client, Nick Kassotis, is not just an accomplished attorney and decorated JAG officer who served his country in Iraq and in the Pentagon. He is also a man who lived in fear, relentless, all-consuming fear. His wife, Mindy, also lived in fear. Mr. Kassotis is accused of the unthinkable, the absolutely unthinkable, murdering his wife. But the truth, what really happened, is far more complex. Mr. and Mrs. Kassotis were told that they were targets. You will hear testimony that a man calling himself Jim McIntyre, who knows if that is his real name, claiming to be with the FBI, told them that their lives were in danger, that they had to disappear, follow orders without question, and trust no one. Not their family, not their friends, not their loved ones. Every move they made, every lie that they both told, every strange decision, and there were quite a few that you will hear about in testimony, were driven by that fear. Mr. Kassotis lied to his friends. He lied to his family. He lied to Mindy's loved ones. He lied for years. Not because he wanted to deceive them, but because he believed that their lives depended on it. You're not going to hear testimony that Mr. Kassotis killed Mindy. You will hear testimony that he tried to protect her, but he was manipulated, controlled, terrified. And that fear, real and overwhelming, shaped everything that he did for years. Who's Nicholas Kassotis? Mr. Kassotis grew up in New Hampshire, in rural New Hampshire, in an area where there were quite a bit of hunting down a road. He graduated college from Boston University. He has 2 law degrees. He has a JD degree, which is the basic law degree, like I have, a JD degree from Northeastern University up in Boston, and he has an LLM from Georgetown. In Georgetown, he specialized in national security law and in cybersecurity. You will hear that Mr. Kassotis is a decorated military veteran, as I've already alluded to. He served in the JAG Corps for a decade. He served in Iraq. He was in the Pentagon. When he separated from service, he left as a lieutenant commander. He achieved numerous commendations within the Navy. He got the Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal, the Joint Service Commendation Medal. And during Nick's time in the Navy, in the JAG Corps, he would sit at this very table that the prosecutors are at now, because he, during his time, at least in Italy, he was a prosecutor. You will hear testimony, I expect. I don't know everyone that the state is going to put forward, but you're going to hear testimony, I imagine, from Mr. Kassotis' first wife, Heather. They were divorced in 2015 when Mr. Kassotis learned that Heather was being unfaithful. He marries his second wife, Mindy Kassotis, the woman that was tragically murdered, and that you're here to hear evidence upon, in the fall of 2016. Shortly thereafter, Mr. Kassotis separates from the Navy. He serves for a brief time as a civilian in the Navy, but then he leaves that. And why does he leave that? He leaves because, frankly, a lot of very strange and unusual things begin to happen, and you will hear testimony on that. And he eventually contacts authorities, and a man calling himself Jim McIntyre appears. Now, Jim McIntyre claims to be with the FBI, and Jim McIntyre tells Mr. Kassotis, tells Mindy, that they're in danger. They're in danger, their life is in danger, and they have to go essentially on the run. You'll also hear that following Mr. Kassotis' divorce from his first wife, Heather, she gets a $1.5 million judgment as part of the divorce against Mr. Kassotis. In the course of providing that award, Mr. Kassotis was under the belief that he was the recipient of a sizable sum of money. But you will hear he never gets that money. That money was illusory. That money was allegedly being held by Jim McIntyre for Mr. Kassotis. So he believed he was getting that money. He never got that money. I imagine that the state is going to tell you that Mr. Kassotis and Mrs. Kassotis, Mindy, moving around the country is because of this $1.5 million judgment. But the reality is it was because of fear. So there's a lot going on with Jim McIntyre. There are a host of lies that are told by my client over the next few years while they are on the run. As I said, you're going to hear about the lies that they told to their friends. You're going to hear about the lies that they told to their family, and specifically that Mr. Kassotis told. But this isn't a case about that. I would like you to focus on the tragic murder of Mindy Kassotis. You're going to see horrific, awful images of Mindy Kassotis' body. Unfortunately, I imagine that they are going to stay with you long after this trial is over. You're going to see her torso. You're going to see her legs. You're going to see her head. And it will be difficult for you to see that. I'm sorry that any of us have to see that. You're going to see a Milwaukee knife that was found near the scene of her body. What aren't you going to hear? You're not going to hear evidence that that knife was used on Mindy Kassotis. You're not going to hear evidence from the state's own tool mark expert that that knife was used on Mindy Kassotis. You're going to hear about a tub that was found near her body that was likely used to transport Mindy Kassotis. You're not going to hear evidence of Mr. Kassotis' DNA on that tub. You're not going to hear evidence of Mr. Kassotis' blood on that tub. Just like in the knife, you're not going to hear evidence tying Mr. Kassotis to that specific knife. Now, you will hear evidence that Mr. Kassotis purchased the same brand and style of knife at Home Depot. But you will not see evidence again that ties Mr. Kassotis to that specific knife found at the scene. You're also going to hear evidence of a knife set that Mr. Kassotis purchased at Bass Pro Shops around the time of Mindy's death. But again, the state's own tool mark expert is not going to be able to tell you that those knives were used on Ms. Kassotis. There's a lot that the state will not be able to show you. The state will not even be able to tell you how Mindy died. They do not know how Mrs. Kassotis died. She was murdered, but how is unknown. You're not going to hear evidence telling you where Mindy was killed. They don't know where Mrs. Kassotis was killed, and you won't hear evidence about that. At the time of Mindy Kassotis' murder, Mr. and Mrs. Kassotis were living in Savannah. You'll hear evidence about the state's searching of the Airbnb that they were renting in Savannah. You'll hear evidence of her blood being found on the futon at that residence, along with another individual's blood. You won't hear evidence about whose blood that second individual's is. The state's case is going to be very circumstantial, which is why they will tell you it takes 2 weeks to put it on. You're going to hear evidence that my client's vehicle was at the scene because they track the GPS in the vehicle. And when I say the scene where her body was found. But you're not going to hear any eyewitnesses placing my client at the scene. You're just not going to see any of that. So while you're going to hear witness after witness after witness testify about the lies that my client told when he was on the run from the individual or individuals that were trying to harm him and his wife. You'll hear lots of that. You're not going to hear a lot of evidence tying my client to this murder. So what I ask you to do is focus on what's really at issue here. As you watch this evidence, focus on what evidence does the state have that ties Mr. Kassotis to the death of Mrs. Kassotis. They're going to want to distract you. They're going to want to get into all these other lies. They're going to want to get into his third wife. He marries another woman shortly after Mindy's death. A woman that he had been inappropriately flirting with during the last months of Mindy's life. And after Mindy's tragic death, he goes to Pennsylvania and he marries her. But none of those are issues that are the primary issue. So I would just like you to listen to all of the state's evidence, hear what their witnesses say, look at their exhibits, and see if, once you review all of that, the state is going to meet their burden. Thank you very much, and I appreciate your attention this morning.
Thank you.
Opening statement from Doug.
Ms. Mayo.